Hi there, everyone. Welcome to Dave Live 3. And today I got something special. I'm going to talk about Crime Traveler, The Adventures of Dave Slade, who I happen to be a prominent part of. All of the above, yes. I'm trying to adjust my camera here, so bear with me. And I just want to say this was not done overnight. This goes way back many years ago when I came up with this idea, this storyline called 2020. I was watching this David Lynch film, and this guy said, "I'm in your house right now." Remember that guy, Robert Blake? That inspired me to write this 2020, where this guy, or later on, a gal comes up to this guy in the present and says, "I'm in your house right now." And that was the beginning. And I went into this 2020 storyline, which I did on my TV show, The Dave Gold Show. And I did it with Rick Poley and Nicholas Garofalo. And then we shot it on video with this Jared, famous cameraman, Polish cameraman and filmmaker. And this redhead lady, I don't know her name anymore. It's on YouTube. You can go on YouTube and find it. And then the years passed, and Nicholas M. Garofalo and I became friends, and we collaborated on a lot of things. And he really wanted to do 2020, and he wanted to do it as professional as possible. So I had an inroad with a guy named Mark Frotto. And Mark is fantastic. He does editing, he does cinematography, he composes the music, the soundtrack for the film and everything. He's a one-man wrecking crew. And on top of it, he shoots it all in one day, which we opted to do because it's the cheapest way to go. And he edits it within a week. I used to do films, independent films, student films, or whatever, and I would wait ad nauseum to get my copy if I ever got one. But in this case, we decided to do 2020, and we finally did it. And I said I wanted to do this before the year 2020 comes. And I worked on the initial script, and then Nick came aboard, and he honed it, and he toned it, and he phoned it in back and forth. I used Final Draft. He used Microsoft Word, and that made it a little bit absurd. But we got it done, and we shot it in 2019, November 2019. So it would be edited and done for 2020. Little did we know that the pandemic would hit in March of 2020. And fortunately, we had it done before then because it was out there and running for 2020 and on. So then we go to 2021. And by that time, we developed another sequel to 2020, which was called Blood Fear. Now, in this case, Nick came up with the storyline, and I was like on 2020 where I came up with the storyline, and then he helped out. It was just the opposite here, so I helped out on Blood Fear. But we are both co-writers of this and producers and director. I directed all of them, but there's a lot of input by him and Mark, who really knows what he's doing. He's done a lot of films. But we did this, and the thing I like about Blood Fear is we did it in November 2021. Its release is a 2022 release date, but it was done exactly 2 years after we did 2020. And if you see 2020 and then you see Blood Fear, that's a 2-year time difference in real life time, which I think is pretty amazing. That Linklater guy shot a film that was maybe 10 or 15 years apart, and it covered people's lives. Ethan Hawke was in it. But just to see myself 2 years later in real life time, and well, 4 months after that, we did Feeding the Living, which Nick created, and I chipped in on, I wrote in on, and we had a trilogy all of a sudden. We had an 85-minute film, and it was titled by Nick. I'm pretty much of a purist. I kind of like to keep what I have, but Crime Traveler: The Adventures of Dave Slade. Now, Dave Slade is the original character in 2020, and Nicholas Garofalo played him. I had played him earlier. I had other actors play them, but he made it his own, and we did the 2020, and we had some characters in there. We had this Terra Nova, who was a monstrous lady, very evil. That's how it was designed written-wise. And she was very good. And she played the adversary to Dave Slade, coming from the future to the present. Slade goes to the past. He comes back to the present. He goes to the future. And my character I created for myself was called Oldman. Oldman. But he was known as Old Man because, as my character explained, a lot of people just didn't get it, and they broke it in two. It was kind of a humorous little take. I remember Nick said once, "Oh, no, don't use that," but it really caught on. Old Man, Oldman. You can say it either or, but it's used both too. But it's a lot of fun to have a play on that. And I'm like a CIA operative that helps him out with this Terra Nova, who's coming from the future to run havoc over him. And I show up as a CIA operative, and I talk about when Slade went back into the past, like to the Berlin Wall and to Iraq and to a lot of other events in the past, because he can time travel. And that's when we came up with Crime Traveler. And this whole idea of time travel, I did a little research, and there's this concept that people can time travel. And we use that concept. And I, for the life of me, can't think of that name right now. It might come to me during this, what is called, and forgive me for not having it in front of me. I did research on this before I started to make sure I had everything covered. And for the life of me, it doesn't come to me this second. But that's okay, because we had Terra Nova, and her name in real life is Dakota Woolmer, and now she goes by Lex Rojas. Mary Lee was the love interest of Dave Slade, and she was played by Rosie Sue. Sue is spelled X-U. You would think S-U-E, but she was a nice little gal, and she was eager to play it, and she did a great job. And then we had Francia Fonseca play the mystery woman, who starts the show out, the 2020, in a very memorable opening, and it catches the audience's eye. It catches them. That was what Nick had said a long time ago. You got to really catch that audience right away. And boy, did we catch them. You got to see it to believe it. She's really sexy, and there's a really sexy opening scene. And it really catapults Nick into this scene with Terra Nova. And then I'm looking as a CIA operative monitoring it. And it carries on to the end, where she seemingly is assassinated by Nick, or killed, or wiped out, or whatever. But she disappears. And then it ends with a poem that I wrote 2020, and it segues into Blood Fear, which we did 2 years later. Now, Blood Fear is very interesting because we have Caroline Fisher playing this part of Crasota. Crasota is Krasota, and she did a fantastic job. And using blood fear, you got to see the scenes where she's covered in blood. And Nick's character, Slade, seemingly is confused. He thinks she's the enemy from the future, like Terra Nova was. As it turns out, she wasn't that bad, but at first it seemed to be. And she gave Oldman a hard time, too. And she took care of him and banished him to the future. And at the end, Slade was able to recover and bring him back. But there's this other guy, Riccione, played by Brett Wise, who was a menacing character for Slade. Slade had to deal with him. And we had a fantastic ending of Blood Fear where he seemingly is at the advantage. Brett has the advantage on Slade, but Slade ends up shooting him through the, I shouldn't be saying this, I want you to watch it. And it's just a stunning ending. And Mark, with his cinematography and his editing and his composition, music, was fantastic. And he really helped a lot. So now we have 2 parts done. And I say, what are we going to wait another 2 years? But Nick kicked the can down the road pretty quickly, and he came up with Feeding on the Living. And we worked on that together. And that just deals with a lot of vampires all of a sudden. And by the way, Manhattan Skyline Films is the name of Nick's company. I used to go by Gold Productions. I don't think that's on the credits, but lo and behold, we got Trauma Entertainment to distribute this. And that's pretty big time. If anyone knows about Trauma is well known in the industry for like horror films, sci-fi films. And ours is a combination of horror because Feeding on the Living introduced horror, vampires. And we did sci-fi before that. And now all of a sudden we have a Mark with his composition, but also we had this other Mark, Thalassides, who came up with this really rocker song for Dave Slade as he's trying to get the vampires at the end. And we made a trailer of it. I had a version made after Nick did his, so it's really rocking. I put some subtitles in there that did the words of the song because I didn't quite understand all the words. And Nick said you could hear them after a while, but it's good to see them come up on the screen. And it's an excellent ending. And we have this lady playing Elvira. Her name was Irina Oz. She's like a Russian woman in real life. She had like really blonde hair, white blonde hair, and she looked perfect for the part. And we had auditions, and I knew right away when she walked in, she was the one to play the part. The problem is, I did casting. Nick put the advertisement on the internet, but I'm the one that held the auditions, and I held them in coffee shops in Manhattan. And I'll tell you what, I don't like casting because you got to reject people. And everyone who came through that door, there's not too many, were pretty damn good. And they could have done the part. But as far as this part of Elvira, Irina was perfect for the part. And you got to watch it, Feeding on the Living, which is the third part of Dave Slade, Crime Traveler, The Adventures of Dave Slade. Crime Traveler, it's titled the beginning, Crime Traveler, The Adventures of Dave Slade. And this is an 85-minute film, and it's out there. And you can watch it. And I'm telling you, you should watch it. And just check it out. Now, we had some lady do sound for us, this Sophia, on Blood Fear. And Sophia was quite good. Nick found her. Unfortunately, she got COVID. She contracted COVID for Feeding on the Living 4 months later, and so she couldn't help us on sound on that. But she was pretty good. Elenaz, I think her last name is Elenaz, or I'm sorry, I don't have it 100%. I should have, but I don't. Okay? So anyway, I'm Dave Sweeney, a.k.a. Dave Gold, and I co-created this And we did this, and I'm very happy we did this because Nick finally decided to leave New York City. He used to live in Coney Island. And by the way, that's where we shot all of this. And you got to watch it because that's the character. That's a big part of the character. And personality is Coney Island. And he mapped out all these great shots. And we shot them. My personal favorite is Blood Fear. When we did that, it was like, seemed desolate there. There's no one around. 2020, this kind of overcast day. It was kind of nice. It had a certain ambiance and mood. But then Feeding on the Living, we shot in the middle of the day, but Mark turned it into a night scene completely. It's all at nighttime. And the special effects he used are fantastic. So it's a great trilogy combined into one show. And I have to say, I'm not going to leave anybody out because I jotted some names down that I said it was a great show, and we got to talk about Warren Chow because he played Silas the vampire, and he was damn good. Warren was excellent. And we had a couple of these ladies who played vampire wannabes. They were actually bitten at the beginning of Feeding on the Living. Faith Quinn played Mary, and Irina Scarola played Sally. And albeit they're only in at the beginning of Feeding the Living, not for too long. Unfortunately, we wanted to use them a little bit more, but they had to go. One of them had to go, so they both went. And we used them as much as we could. They look really good in it. It's a great opening scene. If you see Feeding on the Living, you see Nick coming out of the subway terminal in Coney Island, walking down the steps. And then we cut to the vampire action right away. And my character, old man, is trying to warn Slade, played by Nick, not to get involved with this vampire. And he does. He doesn't want to listen. His character really is bent on that woman. She's a very attractive, spike-haired blonde woman. And he gets involved. And he's got to navigate through it. And at the very end, he seems to wrap everything up, but he meets a somewhat of a funny demise. It's not an ever-ending demise, but he is kind of faded away like old cowboys are. Because that's what he put in the script about old cowboys don't die. They just fade away, essay. And that's what happened. But you got to see it to believe it. It's a very visual piece, all three of them. Fantastically done. I wrote these poems that ended 2020 in Blood Fear, and it was voiceovered at the end. But for the last one, he opted to go with the song written by his buddy, and I told you the buddy's name. It was Mark Thalassides, and he had a great rock and roll song. And it was like a rock video, really, about Slade finally making up his mind. He's got to take care of business, and he's just stalking the two vampires. And he gets one of them, Silas, and then he has to deal with the other one, Irina, and Alvara, played by Irina, in his apartment. And he is like holy water he throws on her. And I'm giving it away. Okay, you got to watch it. It's a great show. And I'm in the know. Ho, ho, ho. So, I wish I could take some questions. I wish people were chatting with me because this is going live initially. But since they're not, we will talk about Camelot, which was created sort of with these three pieces in my mind. I'm happy I can hang my hat on this, that I got something to show for myself that's good over the years. And it's something that we can be proud of. And it's got life. It's been out on festivals. Nicholas Garofalo is an expert at getting it out there. Get it to festivals and get prizes. It's won some prizes. And you got to check it out. you got to check the website out. Go to Crime Traveler, The Adventures of Dave Slade. You see how you can contact me here, Dave Sweeney at Dave Gold's Show. You'll see them all on there. So don't despair if you can't get it right away. Just stick with it. And I'll tell you, you'll be happy you did. Okay, kid? And I just like to say, to shoot each piece in one day, it's pretty amazing. We shot 2020 in one day in 2019. We shot, and that was November 2019. Then we shot Blood Fear in one day in November of 2021. Although it was credited for a 2022 release, we shot it in November 2021. Then we shot Feeding on the Living, I think, in March 22. And in one day. And the scripts were challenging to do them all in one day. And of course, we have to compromise a little bit on the shots. You can't do tremendous amount of takes. You got to just keep moving along. Nick really contacted the actors and auditioned with them online, read the lines. We did it with Caroline Fisher when we were doing Blood Fair. She played Crisota, and it was fantastic when we were rehearsing. And she did a fantastic job. Casting her was kind of tough after Terra Nova, played by Dakota. It was a tough act to follow, but she did a damn good job doing so. And then we had the last one play Elvira, and we had three great villainesses, and they're all were uniquely different. And I like to say that we wrote them different, but the actresses carried it off to a hilt and took it to the tilt. Okay, so we could toast to that. And as a matter of fact, we're starting to wind down today. I got a few more minutes on my 28-minute show because I'm going Dave live now. This is the third version. And this was meant to tout this show. And you can see the T-shirt. And Mr. Nick Garofolo got the T-shirt. He gave me one I proudly wear. And we've worn it out when we met. They have a few drinks. They have a few pops and some burgers and pizza or whatever in Manhattan. I don't know where this is going to continue since he's moved. I don't know if he's going to be coming back, but we are in correspondence as we speak now. And holy cow, I hope this meets up to the standards he was expecting when he suggested I take advantage of this show of mine and do this here and now. So I just want to say that there was another gentleman named Ray Hutchins that Nick has worked with over the years. I never met him in person, but apparently he works behind the scenes and he helps out with sound and different other areas of technical expertise and script ideas or whatever. So he's done a lot. And I've never met him, but I just tip my hat to him as a contributor. So I think I covered about everybody here. I just want to make sure I don't miss anyone. Rosie Zhu is from China originally. Francia Fonseca, I think, was from, where was she from? Venezuela. Caroline Fisher's from Austria. I'll tell you, it's an international cast of characters. Brett Wise, I believe, is from Eastern Europe originally. I'm from New York, upstate New York. Nick is from New York. I think he was born in the Bronx and he grew up in Cape Cod. He lives there now. Holy cow, I hope I didn't give up too much information. But it was fun to do. Mark Frado, I found out about Mark through my friend Johnny Calvanico, who worked with us. And Johnny did some other things. And he had done a movie in New Jersey with Mark that I was supposed to have done. It was a couple of summers back before we started this one. And I didn't feel like doing it, so I contacted the director and I said, I can't do it. It was about a week away, but I had someone, John Calvanico. And that director gave me a hard time. Well, you shouldn't be quitting at this time, but I had Johnny, and Johnny went in and he did the movie, and Mark was the cinematographer there. And as a result, that's who we knew who Mark was. And we did this horror film called Deranged Foxhole with Johnny and Nick that I wrote. I played a zombie in that, a small part. But I don't want to get into that because I want to just talk about this Crime Traveler, namely, today. And it was a good show. It was a good show too. But this one, Crime Traveler, The Adventures of Dave Slade, 85 minutes, I believe. You got to check it out. It's out there. Just look it up. Contact IMDb and just put in Dave Sweeney or Nicholas M. Garofalo, and you will find it. Believe me, you will find it. So right now, I want to say sayonara. It's been a blast. And I've been on sort of a fast. I cut back on the drink and the food. And I want to have a good attitude. I want to look good, and I want this to continue to be good for us as we move forward. So I hope you wish us the best of luck, as I wish you the best of luck as we conclude this show today. And I once again want to thank all of the participants that made this happen. Crime Traveler, The Adventures of Dave Slade. And we talk about Nicholas Garofalo, Caroline Fisher, Mark Frado, Ray Hutchins, Dakota Wolmer, a.k.a. Lex Rojas, Rosie Sue, Francia Fonseca, Brett Wise, Manhattan Skyline Films, Trauma Entertainment. Thank you very much for taking us on and distributing this. Feeding on the Living composers Mark Frado and Mark Thalassides. And of course, Arena Oz as Elvira and Warren Chow as Silas. And Faith Quinn as Mary. And Irina Scarola as Sally. And with that, no further ado, I want to say thank you for watching this show. And I am in the know. And I am very proud that we did this show. And once again, it's out there. Crime Traveler, The Adventures of Dave Slade. Yes!